Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Left, Right, and Center Show. I'm Tim. That's Nate, and Chris is AFK today. I don't think he's going to be able to make it today, but if he does, it'll be a bit later. So today it's just going to be the center and the right. We're going to be kind of free-forming it. We got a couple little articles, things to talk about. Obviously, the impeachment is going to come up a little bit. It's a big topic right now. Touch a little bit on what we talked about last week, stuff like that. So. Welcome back to those that are watching live. And if you have any questions, obviously post them in chat. We try to.
Oh, yes. We love those.
Keep up. Yeah.
I was going to say, well, technically, Tim, you're a little bit on the left. So it's like the far left and the right. But then I was thinking, well, Trump's not in office anymore. Tim's probably going to actually revert to the mean that he really is, probably right on the center.
Yeah. Every political test I've ever taken, I fall almost dead center between conservative and progressive, but I do tend to go pretty heavily towards libertarian. And a lot of people think that libertarian is
respect.
A lot of people think libertarian means progressive, but it's more like they think it's just left and right, but it's more like a cardinal directions on a compass. There's four different directions.
Utopianists, I would say, a lot of libertarians. Think right because they're like they want a world, they want a country in which everybody agrees on like freedom as the principle, right? Freedom, you know what I'm saying? So which is kind of utopian, right? Because that can't be it can't just be freedom.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that, but I think they would probably lean more maybe progressive libertarian.
Well, again, like you said, cardinal directions. So you'll have progressive libertarians, and those are like the super pot smoking hippies who just want to do their own thing and love everybody, and they're genuine in that love. And that's by the way, love those guys, right? Hippies, you are the way to do the left. I'm serious. Like I don't like the if mixing any side with authoritarianism, you get some problems. I think the right is more suited to it, but that's another conversation. Slightly more suited to it.
Not to break the flow, but I meant to say this in the intro. This here, just right? Hey, bro, you got something on your face? Yeah, I had a spot of face cancer there and had to get it cut off. So it happened yesterday. So I got another day of this bandage, and I got another couple days of.
He got a nose job and they missed.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey. Capitalism, man. I was trying to go cheap.
Right. Up, yeah. See, and that was his decision, and he's living with the consequences.
Luckily, I'm living with them, right? So no big deal. It was not a thing. No life-threatening thing or whatever. But hopefully by next week, I won't have to wear a bandage, and you'll just get to see the scar/stitches out the raw.
Scarface. That's your new moniker for the show. Left Scarface and right. Wait. Okay. Whatever.
So to start this off, I thought this would be a fun one to talk about with you. Before I pull it up, I'm gonna say ahead of time. I know there's so much wrong with this meme.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And the comparison and the comparisons it's making, but I think it does strike a chord on some level, and there are some things to draw from it, I think, on some level. So
every good meme has a kernel of truth.
Yeah. So I'm going to read it because it's probably going to be pretty small on the stream. But basically, it's comparing Benghazi to the U.S. Capitol attack. And so on the Benghazi side, it says, a radicalized mob attacked U.S. government facility. Help arrives several hours of delay. Mob overruns defenses. 4 American lives lost and dozens injured. The result of that is Republicans insist on special select committee and 6 separate other committee investigations and $7 million spent on 33 different hearings. And then the right is the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Again, a lot of the same talking points on the top. Radicalized mob, help arrives late, mob overruns defenses, 5 lives lost, American lives lost. And then the bottom says Republicans just want to move on.
Yeah, like, any good meme contains the kernel of truth, right? And it's, just gets you thinking, right? I mean, there's a lot. I could go into the problems with this, and I suppose I will, because that seems to be what I do. But so, listen, man. Okay, so here's a big difference, right? Here's the problem with this meme. The problem, okay, is that On the left, the hearing was about the person that was responsible for the intel leading up to that incident and not responding to that intel, which in this real life case would actually not, it's not Donald Trump, right? In this real life case, that would be, I think, the director of the FBI, right? Because they're saying that the people who knew about this attack, I'm talking about our Capitol, the Capitol attack, the people who knew at the FBI didn't do anything about it for whatever reason, and I don't know why. But if there was going to be a Benghazi-like hearing about the Capitol riots, it would be calling the head of the FBI in front of.
Are Republicans calling for that?
No, they're not.
Or
right?
they,
So again, there's some truth in there.
Yeah, I think to me the biggest.
I think they are. I think it's actually bipartisan. People want to figure out what would happen with that. I don't know if it's not going to be no 7 million, high visible thing, but there's probably going to be a report coming out about that.
To me, the biggest striking difference here is it was a foreign radicalized mob attacking the U.S. versus our own people, right? I think there's a huge distinction there. On one,
articulate it.
Well, it's I'm trying to put my feelings and thoughts into appropriate words here, but I'm not saying that one's worse than the other or that we shouldn't address them, in some of the same way, but to me it's not really a fair comparison. Like, help arrives within several hours while you're in a war zone versus in a civilian zone,
right?
It's
a comparison that is true, but sort of doesn't advance the case of the meme, right? It just happens.
Yeah, radicalized mob. One is maybe a little more planned out than the other. I don't know that for sure. I mean, both of these were obviously planned by the people that did it, but how planned and how advanced it was. Mob overruns defenses. Well, the defenses of of the building in Benghazi that was in a pretty hostile area versus the Capitol building in what should be considered a non-hostile area. So I don't know. I think like there's such a significant difference between the two events that it's almost not really fair to compare them. But
well, right. So like this is an interesting thing, and you actually see this with the Senate trial and with any sort of political endeavor. It takes small twists on every little point. Like every point that's on here is tweaked just a little bit so that it fits. And then in the end, you have a meme that's completely untrue, made up by a whole bunch of small things that are mostly true, right? Because you just bend one and bend one and bend one, and eventually the whole color of the whole thing is different than it should be.
Yeah.
Not to get serious on memes, as we always do, but I mean, hey, we're here to dissect culture, right?
That's how we roll.
Speaking of dissecting culture, so let's dissect the crap out of this. So we talked about this a little bit before the podcast a little bit, but it's a shame we can't get Chris to comment on this. But this stuff right here is some of the stuff that generally makes conservatives blood boil. And I think before we get into this, so let me just read the title and then make a comment about it. So, midwives told to stop using terms such as breastfeeding and breast milk.
Before we move on, I would like to say I feel like the term midwives is worse than breastfeeding and breast milk.
Right. Yeah. There's gendered language right in there. Mid what? Mid people. Okay.
Mid birthing people.
Right. And you're also assuming that they're married, right? Which is patriarchal.
Yeah.
Okay. So enough of that. So, but like this, okay, look, this kind of stuff makes conservatives, and I think most normal people, makes their blood boil, right? When the left starts controlling language, like for example, first it was Indians, which was a misnomer, but it was Indians for the longest time. Then it was Native Americans. Okay, I can understand disambiguation is kind of cool, so it serves a little bit of a purpose. Fine. Now it's now it's like First Nations or First Peoples or something like that, and it's like this is supposed to be better and more woke, and it's like each change is more and more arbitrary than the last, but you don't exactly the common person, especially, like I do this for a living practically, so I can generally do this, but the common person doesn't know how to fight back against it because it's just the polite thing to do, right? And one time I brought up something like this to Chris on the podcast, and he said it's not a big deal, and that's generally the line. He's like, it's not a big deal. Why don't you just do it? And the thing is like, that's gaslighting, man. You like, this is a big push for us, a very small segment of the population, and they want this done. And if you don't do this, they will be very angry, right? And then if you question them on it,
I don't like that argument. The argument
so?
of it's not a big deal. I agree with you that I don't like it, but I think I don't like it for different reasons. And the reason is, if it's not a big deal, then why is there such a big to do about it? Right? It's a big deal to somebody.
Yeah, that's basically what I mean.
Right. So, and the argument to say, well, it's no skin off your back to just comply,
isn't an argument.
As a libertarian.
Yeah.
It doesn't fly with me, right? Like, I want to know why I'm having extra things put upon me, and I'm not saying I won't do them if they make sense. If if I'm hurting somebody's, I think you're on board. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, right?
Right.
You're not
of course, I'm a very polite person, which is.
I'm not.
I know
don't mean to be rude.
You're much more direct than I am, but like it's kind of strange me being on the right, and I think that's actually that's interesting. It's probably part of why, and I'm going to read this in a second. It's part of why a lot of people like me, especially, get really angry about this stuff is because I am a very polite person, and when I'm told, things like this, like you need to address these people by these, one of 72 different pronouns. You need to be using this language. It's first persons, or it's first peoples now, right? Like, I'm sensitive to polite strictures. And when I'm told to do arbitrary things like this, it gets me angry because I want to be polite, and I have to be the asshole. I literally have to be the asshole and say no. And it sounds, and it's like gaslighting. All right, so let me just read some of this, right? So, first of all, this isn't Britain, okay? So I feel like the activists in America come up with ideas, and then Europe just does it, right? Real quick. Maybe I have that backwards or something. Maybe it starts in Europe and eventually leaks to the US. But so this is not in America yet. I mean, we only have women athletes being just crushed by transgender male to female athletes and taking their scholarships. That's all we have right now. But in Britain, in a couple hospitals, midwives have been told to stop using the terms including breastfeeding and breast milk as a part of a new trans-friendly policy at an NHS trust, right? And so, since I'm an American, I don't understand all those words, but the gist of this article is that there's a whole bunch of
Scroll back up real quick.
Yep.
I'm trying to see how widespread this is, right? Like, it says Brighton and Sussex University Hospitals.
Yep.
NHS Trust is the first in the country to formally implement, which would not be known as. So I don't know what NHS. So what? Just those two hospitals?
Yeah, just those two hospitals
combined?
Right now.
Yeah.
It's
Or is that one? Is that just the hospitals? Is it Brighton and Sussex?
I don't know.
University
I don't know.
Place?
Yeah, we have some our British audience is making fun of us right now. That's one hospital. Fucking yank. I don't know. Keeping tabs on it though, right? So you're right. Let's try not to blow the scale out of proportion, but this is like, it's happening. This is an actual honest to God hospital that is doing this, right? This is real life now. This is not just back in 2016 when I was debating this on college campus. It's in real life now, right?
Yeah, I mean, so my guess is your point of view is they have the right to do this, and if the people that work there don't like it, they can quit and find another job.
Depends. If it's a government, if this is government run, then no. Which in Britain it probably is.
It's probably related to some sort of universal health care, but I would imagine it's still an independent.
They have so NHS is the government run healthcare system in Britain. They have a fully, I guess you could say, socialized medicine system.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that every organization that provides medical care is then government run. They just have to comply with whatever the policies are. Similar to if we implemented that, it's not like the government would come out and start issuing checks to all the doctors. They would just pay the medical bills.
Okay,
According
so
to
you're
politics.
making an interesting point that's making me uncomfortable. So I'm just actually going to try to hit it straight on. So you're calling me out for potentially, or you're preempting my argument, saying that as a conservative, I should be okay with. Well, this private company can. First of all, I really don't think it's private. I genuinely don't, which is part of the reason why this bothers me. But you're saying, as an individual, all of these people who are subjected to these sort of tyrannical leftist language controls can just leave and work somewhere else. So, trying to hit that head on. Yeah. So first of all, number one, I'm pretty sure this is public, run by the government. Number two, I'm more commenting on the social changes, right? I'm more commenting on the social pressures behind this rather than the way that it's being implemented or who's implementing it. I'm talking about this as a comment on the general shift culture-wide, right, throughout the West. Does that make sense? So I'm not necessarily attacking the hospitals. I'm attacking the activists behind this.
Yeah, I mean, I was more just making the comment that, in the past you've taken the approach of if you don't like it, find another job. Like I was kind of throwing it up a little bit for you to kind of talk about how that would apply in this situation. Now that it's something that you don't agree with on a core level.
Right, but before it was so number one, that still holds true. It's shitty, as everything is, right? So whatever scenario we were talking about before, I think we were talking about salaries before. It's all shitty. If you're not getting what you want at the job, it's bad, and you don't want to have to leave because something happens that you don't like. But yes, in the end, you need to move if you can't stand working at this one, maybe two hospitals.
It is several. It's two.
Several.
Well,
does several include two?
Well, the trust runs two acute hospitals, blah, 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 the names. And then it says it also operates a number of other hospitals and medical facilities, including blah, 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 blah. So,
Trust is the first in the country. So does that have more than one facility?
It does. So Brighton and Sussex University Hospitals NHS Trust is kind of a company, I guess. I guess the way that their medical groups work is they do it through that way. So, and it is, from what I can tell, private because it talks about planning to merge with other trusts and taking it under its wing other hospitals. So, I think the way that it works is all of the hospitals have to be funded somehow or another through an NHS trust. Because the other one they were going to merge with was Western Sussex Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. So I don't understand the way their system's set up. I've never looked into it.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah. So my take on it generally is, you said you're polite, and I'm not generally, but not out of a sense of uncaring or anything to other people. I generally really do care and don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I think part of me, like nothing gets through my skin hardly. I have very thick skin. I don't get offended by things. I generally find humor in things before I find, frustration.
Yep.
And so, as everybody does, I think I tend to image myself onto other people more. And so I find that being sensitive about some of these things that seem absolutely minor and ridiculous to me to be sensitive about is difficult for me to understand why it becomes such an issue, So if I were to say something like, if I was talking to somebody in these situations and I said breast milk and they're like, hey, breast milk offends me, could you use the word chest milk, which is one of the examples from that thing. I would say, hey, yeah, sorry. Like I did not mean to offend you. I'm happy to use the word chest milk. And then I would probably follow it up with, why does breast milk offend you? Right? Like I want to understand, because that way it'll help me in the future, try and, or something more often than not, the person's like, well, I don't, it kind of, I don't know.
I got to say though, a person who says that out loud is going to come back at you with stuff. They're going to say patriarchy. They're going to spout a whole bunch of social justice slogans.
Maybe.
And you're going to not know.
I've started many a good conversations that way, though. So
you are a much more of a people person than I am. That's for sure. All right, what
which
you
is
got?
weird because you're the polite one.
That polite does not equal people person. I think openness probably contributes a little bit more to being a people person.
Yeah. You have to let me know how the audio comes through on this, because we haven't done audio videos in a little while. But this here is something we talked about last week. This is a angular momentum battery.
Cool.
Hold on. That's very phallic.
Yeah, it certainly is. So I'm not hearing anything coming through your video. While you're doing that, let me just say, so for everybody who didn't see last week's episode, we talked about climate change. And we got really far down into the weeds where I was saying that it's impossible to construct massive batteries. So you can't store solar energy overnight when people are using it, that kind of stuff. And Tim said they're coming out with a whole bunch of new cool solutions for this kind of problem. So you will be able to store energy generated during the day for consumption at night or later in the evening when it's needed. And that would be absolutely critical in order to move over to more green technology like wind and solar.
All right, audio cable A. Just try real quick. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But audio cable A. It doesn't. It's not picking up the audio.
That's too bad.
Well, I'm just gonna. I'll let it play.
Why don't you narrate it?
Because I have a really good British accent in my ear right now. Okay, I want to play just a second of this real quick. We'll probably get to this later. I want to see if it picks it. Yeah, see, it's picking this up. So it's set to input A. Okay, yep. And
that's kind of cool. It's not showing your menu.
And it's set to cable A audio. Yeah, it's not. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Must consider.
You know what? I bet you. Let me see. Nope, that's not it. All right. Well, how about I'm going to mess with this for a second and we can move on to one of yours and I'll see if I can get this figured out.
Yeah. Let's see what I got. Oh, man. Okay, let's see. Oh, this might be something you're interested in. GOP registration drop after Capitol riots reflects growing trend. So the Republican Party is losing registration. People are not signing up as much after the Capitol riots, and I can't freaking imagine why. Longtime Republicans are ditching the political party after January 6th. First of all, who wrote this? You know what I'm saying? The Grio. Sounds like a right-wing publication. Anyways, longtime Republicans are ditching the political party after the January 6th Capitol riots left a bad taste in some GOP members' mouths. And I'm going to stop there, right? So for everybody on my side, like I'm speaking directly to you Republicans, like I don't know about you, but I do have a bad taste in my mouth, right? In order to come to that statement, you have to get around your partisan, and I say you, us, we have to get around our partisan temptation to sort of just hold the line in the face of all the bad crap the Democrats did. Like, look, I get it, but that Capitol 6 riot, I mean, it's kind of a depressing time to be a Republican. Like you can admit that we're all friends here. Tim's just barely even on the left, so like you could say it. Chris isn't here. Chris isn't here to turn the screws in. So, although Tim was a Trump derangement syndrome guy, so
no, I wasn't. I wasn't deranged about Trump. I just couldn't stand the fact that was our president and the things that he was saying was acceptable. I was embarrassed for our country with him as president, to be honest. Like it was pretty sad.
Yeah. Well, look, man. So look, here's
and
the
not
thing.
because of policies. Like we've talked about that. Like
I know.
Policy-wise, some of the stuff I'm fine with.
And you know the funny thing is, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the impeachment trial that's going on in the Senate right now. But like so many of the little stories, right? The stories about what Trump is and the narrative that you build about what Trump is, like all of those are like little bricks. Like let's pretend, Tim, that your narrative is like a pyramid that you're building out of bricks, right? And the way that you build your narrative out of bricks, this pyramid that you're going to sit on top of, like this story about Donald Trump being a bad person, is that each time an incident comes out, you take it, you look at it, and you assess it, and you say, okay, this brick right here, this is a blue brick because Trump's a bad person, and then you put that brick right in your pyramid, and then another incident comes out, it's like, oh, here's another blue brick. Right? I'm looking at this incident, and you just start stacking in all these bricks, right? Most of them are blue because this Trump guy's a fucking idiot, right? And so you just build it up your pyramid. What's that?
Shouldn't they be red bricks?
No, they're blue because Trump is bad, right? Makes sense, right? Because Democrat. I thought this through, bro.
No, red because Trump is Republican.
Right, if they would be red if it was a good thing. Huh?
What?
Right. But you're saying
since when is red good?
Okay.
What
anyways,
are you smoking?
My point is, once you get your pyramid all built up together, and then here we are sitting on the Left, Right, Center podcast talking about what you think about Trump, you're looking over at your pyramid and it's blue. The whole freaking thing is blue because Trump is, he's a bad orange Cheeto man, right? And then I'm looking over here and I've got my red pyramid because every single time I analyze the incidents, every single one of those was misunderstood by the left, and now it's my red pyramid, and Trump is the good guy. I'm not saying any more necessarily, but
okay, my point. I see what you're trying to say now.
Well, let me just. So my point is that in order to change the color of your pyramid or the narrative that you've built around the person, you have to go back and re-examine every single one of those bricks, or let's say the vast majority of them, in order to change the pyramid color or the
so let me continue with your analogy here and where you're wrong with my situation, this overall situation. So I would say that your analogy would be somewhat correct with you and Chris, but one correction is your take on all those bricks isn't the right one.
I didn't say it was.
Isn't the wrong one, right? Like, you said that he has to go reevaluate each of the blue bricks, right? But I think each of you,
an example, the proverbial
each of you have gotten these bricks and you've looked at them and you said that's a blue brick or that's a red brick.
Yes.
When I got a brick, I didn't give a shit if it was red or blue. I would look at the brick and I would say, how good a quality of a brick is this? And it would crumble in my hands. Okay? Like, repeatedly, I would look at these and again, it wasn't about political party. If Trump was a Democrat, I would have hated him just as much. It didn't matter to me about his party or his politics.
What if your partisanship was not left-right? It was just simply that you disliked the man. And I'm not saying even without cause, right? You dislike him for a good reason, but your partisanship, the reason why you looked at this brick and it turned gray, not red or blue, is because you dislike the man so much. And now you have a gray pyramid, and that gray pyramid says that Trump is a bad guy. Even though you're not,
I would say that it would be more like if I disliked the man and I got that brick and I was testing it for its durability or the validity of that brick, right? To go back to that, rather than maybe just like giving it a quick like, maybe I was like, like, oh, it broke, like, okay, yeah, I was maybe a little harsh on some things because of previous things, but this is based on experience that I've had with Trump and his history. And why I had those feelings. But to be honest with you, prior to him becoming president, I wasn't very much anti-Trump. And I
don't
was
think
actually
was, or very few people were.
The people whose house I was at when the election results came in were literally started crying.
I thought you meant prior the whole thing, prior him coming down the elevator and saying he was going for president.
Yeah. So and I think generations older than us had that's where Trump actually shines because he has a lot of history in media and other things that our generation knows who he is, but all we know
weren't really around when his stuff was big.
Yeah, I mean, like he was in what's that movie? The
Home Alone.
Oh my God, Home Alone. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I had it and it was like. He was in Home Alone as an example, right? And as I understand, he like forced himself into it. So
stop it! You read that article?
No.
Too?
So they could use his hotel,
man. He's just like, yeah, you can use my hotel. Just put me in your fucking movie.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, it's not a big deal. Yeah,
right.
I don't see anything wrong with that, but it is what it is. So anyway, I think that's not a fair analogy, though. It wasn't political for me. It was quality of the person, quality of his work. I don't think he did much of all other than spew bullshit out. And what really got me more than anything wasn't that he was a just doing those things is that people bought into it so heavily, believed it so hard.
Especially towards the end, I will start agreeing with you on that.
That's because of the term you like to use a lot called cognitive dissonance.
I don't think so.
But
obviously I don't think so, but
yeah, well, wrong. But anyway, so yeah, you'll probably see me going forward being a little bit less left leaning if it seemed I was that way, but it was only because I was always dissing on Trump. It was less about the policy, but more about the methods and what he was doing. And so it probably came across that I was very left leaning, but generally not. So anyway, I think I got the video working.
Let's do it. Come on.
It was the fact that it was actually on the company's website and not in YouTube because of the way this plugin works. So
mankind's oldest tools and optimize it for an entirely new purpose, the storage of electrical.
Doing what now?
I'm hearing double sound. Sounds
double
cool.
Video?
Just play it.
Double video sound?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll work on it later.
Energy. The end wheel consists of casing, a carbon fiber rotor, a motor generator unit, and a solid base. Speed is the key to efficiency. The carbon fiber flywheel accelerates to 45,000 revolutions, hovers wear-free, held by magnetic bearings inside a vacuum. Electrical energy drives the flywheel up to highest speed. The so-called stored kinetic energy is transformed with the minimum. Flywheel storage can be loaded and unloaded without any aging or wear. Durastore combines several end wheel to a system solution. The modular structure allows expansion and the creation of customized solutions at any time.
Yeah, so then they kind of go through
interesting
more of the details. But
let me just talk about that in context of what I was saying. So if this is a solution, the manufacturing of those devices, the manufacturing and upkeep of those devices cannot exceed the energy that's put into the system, right? The system must sustain itself. So as a whole, if it's okay. So
that's like any other investment, right? Like
correct.
If I'm going to start a bit, yeah, but that's over time, and so that's the thing we were trying to talk about though is you were talking about current cost and not future cost, and with any investment, the current cost is generally more expensive, right? But the future gain and the future cost is what you need to look at. So today, if you were just looking at the cost today of continuing to burn coal or building an infrastructure that can support green energy, it's more expensive to build an infrastructure that can support green energy.
That's the
but
sound
long term
being wrong.
Oh yeah. Okay. But long term, there's massive benefit to doing it, and that was the argument.
It depends.
Anyway, I wasn't trying to get. I wasn't trying to get.
Were like mined by African children who were, like getting rickets. Can African children get rickets? I don't even know. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if the current cost is X high, the cost of moving people away from the slowly advancing seawater in 100 years is, probably not going to be offset by that. Plus, you're going to slow current growth. Anyway, okay, wait, well, hold on.
I don't want to get back into this debate.
Yeah, I know.
But
sorry, because we will.
Don't tempt us. Just to say, like,
okay,
the only
fine.
concern isn't moving away from seawater. There's many other things, but regardless, I thought it would be interesting for you to see just a quick, cutaway.
Yeah, I've been thinking. Look, man, I'm not going to say
those are currently installed.
I've been thinking about those kinetic elevators, those elevators where during the day you bring the stuff up. Because to me, that seems perfect. I just cannot right there. Like, I don't know, put 50,000 pounds on an elevator and just slowly crank that thing up throughout the day.
What? Okay, you pull something else up. I'm going to find the video that shows that. Those are really neat. I actually saw them on another YouTube channel, so.
Okay. All right. Cancel culture is in full swing. Let's do this. So, 2 prominent New York Times journalists depart over past behavior. So, I'm not going to read this article very much. This is a New York Times article. I recommend. I'm sorry, this is an NPR article. My bad. Obviously, I'm on autopilot. My bad. So, go read this article. This is a good article. People are being canceled, right? And I know Chris, it's funny because we have Chris on the podcast and he says, "Oh, I'm not for cancel culture," and it's almost frustrating because you would think that a host like me comes on here to have catharsis, to like see the other person say like, "Oh yeah, man, my bad," that's my guys doing that, they shouldn't be doing that. But then Chris is just like, "Yeah, cancel culture is horrible." So, but I do want to talk about this a little bit. So, there's journalists at the New York Times. There's one of these guys in particular. This article talks about two people, but one of them in particular got fired for saying the N-word in a certain context, right? So I can understand firing somebody because of saying the N-word with poor context, right? Everybody can imagine, if you
was he singing a rap song?
I said hard R, right? So I was distinguishing, right? So if you're a white guy dropping the hard R, I can see you getting fired immediately. If you're a black person and you do the soft A in a professional setting, sure, right? Context matters. But apparently it's starting to matter less and less, right? And this is actual real life. This is happening to people. People at the New York Times are getting fired. And here's the scenario. So the scenario that led to this guy getting fired was that a student asked this journalist, right? Because he was chaperoning, he was doing, I don't know what he was doing. He was chaperoning some students on a trip or something like that. And the student asked this journalist, "One of my classmates said the N-word with a hard R. Should they be canceled?" And then when he was responding to the student, he said the word in the response, right? When he was trying to answer the student, he used the word. Right? And because he did that, he's getting fired from the New York Times. Okay? Time for you to respond to him, because that's crazy. That right there is that. So let me get specific.
It's hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Like in today's world, I do believe it, but at the same time, it's hard for me to believe. Without my first inclination was I want to see the actual event happening, because it could be, he's answering the kid's question, but then the way he answers the question is more the impact of what caused this than him just using the word, right?
Let me read verbatim. So this is his words about the incident. So, take his word for it. But this is no right-wing guy. This is a freaking journalist for the New York Times. So, quote, "I was asked at a dinner by a student whether I thought a classmate of hers should have been suspended for a video she made as a 12-year-old in which she used a racial slur. To understand what was in the video, I asked if she had called someone else the slur or whether she was rapping or quoting a book title. In asking the question, I used the slur itself." And he's getting fired from the New York Times for this. Okay?
Yeah.
That is crazy, because intent matters, right? And
I agree.
If intent no longer matters, right? And again, so let's go back to what you said earlier, because that is a relevant question to ask. The New York Times is just a private organization. He has every right to they have every right to hire and fire how they please, right?
This is such a tough topic, because there's so much emotion and everything built around the racism in this country and all of those things, right? And so my gut says, though, if it's okay for someone to make a rap song and have that rap song popular and played and everything using these terms, then how can it be so offensive for somebody else to use it in a completely descriptive sense, rather than,
right, exactly.
And I don't know, I think for most people, it's they kind of ride that middle line, but from maybe this got publicity, maybe they wanted to fire him anyway, and they were using this as an excuse. there's a lot of different things, but I can't imagine that just because of that, like he was a star employee, this was his first strike. There's no other issues. Like there's got to be some other underlying information because this seems a little bit too extreme for it to be, everything that happened. Short of a video of him saying it blowing up and them having to let him go to save face, but I haven't heard anything about it outside of
Right.
this so far. So that doesn't mean, I'm not the most up on this type of stuff. So, I don't know. Again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before a little bit, which was, in the breast milk thing. Like, again, I don't find stuff offensive, right? Like,
Right, but they would say that it's not for you to be offended by the N-word.
well, I understand, but there's other terms that are used to me that could be found offensive. I'm called a ginger a lot, or soulless, or cracker, or whatever 100 other terms people use for things. And like, I understand there's a lot less history and things behind those than the other side. And I'm not trying to equate everything, but
what the left would say about that is that the power dynamic doesn't disadvantage you, and therefore you were not harmed, right? So that that gingers per se are not at the a disadvantage by the current system.
Dude, look, I've never been a skinny person, right? I've always been a little bit heavy set, and more so when I was younger than I am now. And when people would call me fat, it hurt, regardless of my skin color, right? Slurs hurt. Doesn't have to be racial. Slanders and slurs hurt regardless of the situation if you are sensitive to that particular thing, right? So I don't think it's fair to just say that, oh well, because you're different, that it doesn't hurt as much. Like, you either have to take a stance on all slurs and words like that equally, in my opinion, or be as equally I think you should fight them all equally. I think that's the best way I can say it, because I don't think any of them should be necessarily accepted. But the word fat also shouldn't be removed from the language, because it has other uses. Now, I'm not saying the N-word does, but a lot of words, if used,
well, sure it does. It can be to ask a student whether their friend used it in a certain context. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a tool. And I mean, there's a quote right in here from the red lipstick, red hair, red whatever contingent at the New York Times talking about it. And so this was a joint letter written to the newsroom by people who were supporting the firing. Right? These are other writers and staffers that supported the firing, and they said, "We do not tolerate racist language regardless of intent." Like, just think about that sentence. Regardless of intent. And
well, I guess we'll have to go back to the whole, if you don't like it, quit and find another job.
But again, so I'm going to point out that I'm trying to fight, like, I'm talking about culture wars here, right? So I'm not necessarily talking about whether the New York Times has the right to do this, which it obviously does. I'm not protesting that. What I'm protesting is that this is an actual thing that is happening in Western civilization right now. And it's crazy. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's going to have an explosive backlash, similar to, what we saw with Trump being elected.
Okay, so
and those
Trump
type of
was the explosive backlash.
To some degree.
Like, that's what I was trying to tell you guys. Like, this kind of stuff is driving Republicans insane. Like,
it's driving most people insane. That's the thing. That, like, even Chris who's, in my opinion, solidly on the left progressive side.
It's
right?
fair to say.
He also doesn't agree with this type of thing. But the problem is, I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of the corporate, heads and a lot of the people in charge, they also don't agree with it. The problem is, it's cover your ass syndrome.
Yep.
It's not about, I think this is what needs to be done from a cultural standpoint, so I'm going to do it. It's holy shit, somebody could sue us if we don't do this. We're just going to take the easy path and not get sued and let this go, right? It's more in light of our culture of, the suing everybody and taking illegal action for everything that hurts our feelings a little bit,
I
right?
don't know if it's suing. I think it's social censure.
Litigation. That's what I was trying to get to.
I don't think it's litigation. I think it's just social media campaigns. It's cancel culture. It's if
I don't think so, because that would require so many people to be on board.
Dude, this stuff happens all the time, man.
I know it does, but again, I don't think it's because of, like, as an example, in my career, it's extremely regulated. We have to track everything, note everything, to such minute detail. And it's not that I agree that this doesn't benefit my clients most of the time, right? It's only there. I spend a lot of my time doing all of this work that's only there to make sure that if they say something happened that I don't get completely demolished in court, because there's so many regulations that side with client versus professional, that I have to have all of this. I have to spend so much time covering my ass to make sure, even though I know I'm doing the right thing, and just in case, right? And I think this is also the same thing. I don't believe that I need to do all these things. It doesn't benefit the client, doesn't really benefit me. It's just a waste of time most of the unless that other thing happened, unless I had to cover my ass.
Yeah, but the difference is that this is the injustice. This is literally an injustice. I mean, you can be hyperbolic and say it's injustice that you have to do so much paperwork. I sympathize, I really do. But I mean, this is a borderline civil rights issue, right? It's freedom of speech. This is just common decency. Like the ability to be able to use words.
I think he should try and sue them.
You think so? I don't think he will, though. He won't.
Probably not.
I'm telling you, because there's a there's a club, and now he's outside of it, and the best he can do is his mea culpas and try to get hired at Vox or something. So, looking forward to that guy having a resurgent career.
Yeah, it's a pretty frustrating situation, and I think he's doing the right thing. And what?
Just kidding.
One guy getting fired. It isn't a big deal to me, but it is to him and his family, right? Like,
damn straight, right in the middle of a pandemic.
That's the crazy part. So, all right, I found this video I wanted to show you on the gravity thing. Before I open it up, it's on a channel called Just Have a Think. This guy does stuff on green energy constantly. Very, very good channel. If you're interested in green energy stuff, check him out. So I kind of fast forwarded to the part that just gives you the kind of graphic of this thing I was talking about.
Much larger scale. This 150 meter tall tower
I think I figured out the double.
Has been developed by a company called Energy Vault, led by co-founder and chief executive Robert Piccone. And it's really very clever indeed. Essentially, you've got 3 big cranes bolted to the top of a 35-story steel structure surrounded by a stack of huge blocks arranged very precisely into a tight cylinder.
Do you know how much energy goes into that?
Concrete, don't they?
The blocks aren't steel. The cranes are steel.
Okay.
And
he said 35.
Been cast
okay, whatever. No,
steel cranes surrounded by
brand new concrete. That would have been a very bad idea indeed from an environmental point of view.
Oh, wow.
But Energy Vault have partnered with Mexican materials company Cemex to develop a composite material made up of waste products. There is some concrete in the mix, but it all comes from demolition debris. And that's added to coal ash, industrial slag.
Just for you, translation, debris is debris.
Yeah.
And even some of the soil from local building sites, all of which would most likely otherwise have just been dumped in landfill. There's 6,000 of these composite bricks in the structure, and each one weighs 35 tons. A system of pulleys and motors, all controlled by mind-bogglingly sophisticated software, can move several blocks at a time, shifting them from their predetermined positions in the tall, tight stack to another very precisely controlled position lower down, creating an outer cylinder. As the blocks are lowered, the pulleys cause a rotation that generates electricity. Then when the structure needs to be recharged, renewable energy from surrounding wind turbines powers the winches to pull the blocks back up into their original location.
All right, so for anybody who doesn't know what's going on here, so this is a method to store energy that's generated throughout the day and not being used by the power grid, right? And so every time that you lift a kinetic block, you are storing energy at a higher elevation. And that potential kinetic energy can then be harnessed later at night when when people are actually drawing on the power that was generated during the day, and you can then generate power from that brick pulling down on the crane and going down to the ground, which is a very interesting solution. This is to an electrical engineer. This is a big battery. That's essentially what this is, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a chemical battery.
And as he goes in, this would be a terrible solution for like automotives.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Can you imagine? You just have one huge cylinder too. It'd just be like a mile up in the air. And
but that's the point I was trying to make in our last podcast, was not every energy storage solution is suitable for every different functionality. Right. And so there's a lot of these types of solutions. For cars,
it looks like.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, and that's where energy density matters. But here, energy density matters a lot less.
Right.
Right. And that was the point I was trying to get across with the energy density thing. But this is just one example. And he continues to talk about this and more. And honestly, I encourage you to go watch his channel. He's got a lot of really good things, again, called Just Have a Think. But he continues to go on. And one of the things I found really interesting is that they're able to basically get extremely smooth and quick response times for energy demand from this. And I think at some point he says it's almost identical to what you can get from a coal power plant.
Cool.
As far as energy response times. So,
and this is a good point. I think we should move on to the impeachment and then wrap up after we do that. But I just want to make a point. This is a good thing to realize, right? So if you're watching this and you're partisan just like me, remember that you have a reason for believing the things that you do. And if the information changes, I know it's obvious. You know what I'm going to say. It's like, if the information changes, it's okay. You can relax a little bit, take the new information on board, and then, but always apply it to your strategies, right? So you're right for a reason, right? And just remember that you are right because your information is correct. And if there's new information, you're going to have to shift a little bit, right? So, now, I'm not going to say that Tim's information changes my whole stance on climate change, but this is valuable information, right? This makes it a lot closer to being a viable solution for climate, for moving to green energy. There's still some big problems with it. Maybe we'll talk about that in podcast 2.0 or whatever. But this is good stuff, and I'm actually genuinely excited about this because this is good news. Remember when your opponent gives you good news? Be excited, right? Make sure they're right first, but then be excited that they gave you good news. Sometimes it's good to be wrong, right? And I think that's the takeaway from today's podcast.
You're doing such a good job of fighting your own cognitive dissonance there.
Oh, stop it. I have no cognitive dissonance. I just genuinely... Okay, whatever. Anyways, moving on.
I did have a couple other small things we can go through quick before we get to the impeachment.
Sure. Yep.
So there's a couple articles I saw. Now, both of these are from... I don't know about this one. This one... I don't know if SciPost is actually partisan or not, but I tend to see it a lot on left-leaning Reddit stuff, and so I'm guessing it might be. But it's generally about psychology stuff, so it could just be that they're using it as a source. So anyway, I saw this headline: Republicans tend to follow Donald Trump's opinion on vaccines rather than scientists' opinions. And I know we've talked about this before on the podcast.
Yep.
And, you've
this is
kind
one of your big gripes with him, honestly. Huge.
Yeah. And so you had kind of taken the stance that, not many people, right? Yeah, some do, but it's not a lot, right? It's not, and even those that do, it's not a high percentage, right? And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, okay. So I started reading it, and honestly, I wasn't loving the article, but I did find the link to, so I'm going to close that. I did find the link to the study that was done. That they were talking about this. So this is my kind of stuff right here. Unfortunately, it's in a kind of a hard to understand format.
Presentation.
Again, yeah. So perceived vaccine risk. Okay, so this is the first trial. I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. So basically, they did two things. They ran two studies, if I remember correctly. One took a group of 650-ish people, broke them into their respective categories of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. And then they broke those into 4 different groups randomly and showed them one of 4 different articles. One article was based on a scientist saying that vaccines are very low risk. Another one was scientists saying vaccines are very high risk, and then one was Trump saying vaccines are very low risk, and Trump saying vaccines are very high risk. Right, so it's listed here.
Yeah.
So what this level is the participants' perceived risk of vaccine. So what these people the risk level these people believe a vaccine has
higher from left to right, right?
Right. So this is lower risk, 1.5.
Yep.
3.5 is higher risk.
Yep.
So what this is showing is after reading an article that a scientist wrote, Democrats were like, "Hey, vaccines aren't very high risk." And after reading an article that scientists wrote, Democrats said, "Oh, they are higher risk." Right. So you can see that the article impacted their belief. Right.
Yep.
They thought it was lower risk or higher risk.
There's much more of a delta for Democrats.
Right. And so this black line, just so you know, that goes from here to here, that shows you the 95% confidence level based on the variation within the data of, the people that read this, right? So not every person that read it was like, boop, right here on this dot, like there was obviously a distribution around this point. And so this shows you how wide that distribution is, just as a side. So anyway, then the Democrats
it
read.
Literally had no effect.
It did.
I think it made them a little bit more confident that it was.
They were
safe.
like, whatever.
I swear that bottom dot, like the bottom left dot, is a little bit further left, which I think indicates that when Democrats read that Trump said it was bad, they thought it was a little bit more low risk.
Yeah, do it. Okay, so
I'm gonna do it just to spite him.
So you can see here that actually happens with independent. He says it's low.
Oh yeah. Look at that. That's because you think independents are smarter.
So you can look here and see that, although not as pronounced as on the Democratic side, the same trend happened. Trump's opinion had very little effect, not as much as the scientific. But on the Republican side, they also believed a little bit in the science, but the delta is very small. But the delta between
smaller.
But the delta here for what Trump said is massive, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's as massive almost as the scientists
those guys
were.
Are in a cult, huh? Those Trump followers.
The Republicans.
Oh.
So that was the first one I thought was interesting. So the second one they ran, was do what?
What's this?
So this is the same study. They ran two different studies within the same study. The second one they ran took a second batch of people. This is a whole new group of people, and they also broke them up into their independent groups here. And I think it was close to the same number of people, 600 and something. And they were shown one of three things: either a control, which had nothing to do with vaccines at all, or two articles, one by Trump saying that the risk was low, or one by science saying that the risk was high, or conversely, one by Trump saying the risk was high and one by science saying the risk was low. And what they were trying to get at here was less about, is one party more affected by, their political, I don't want to say mentor, but you know what I mean, leaders' point of view, but more does the disparity between people cause issue, right? Even if you believe one or the other, is it just that the fact that there's a disagreement, does that cause concern?
Basically, who's more sensitive to partisan
narrative? Kind of, maybe.
Sort of?
But one thing I wanted to say before we go in is this confused me for a minute. They changed up the what these numbers on the bottom mean, right? So in the last one, it was how risky you think it was. This one is, are you likely to get the vaccine, right? So up here it says vaccination intention by conditions, right? So being lower means no, I'm not going to get the vaccine. Up here, I'm going to get it, right? So when science says there's a high risk, the Democrats say, no, I'm not going to get the vaccine.
So Trump says there's a low risk, science says high. Democrats are like not getting it.
Right. Trump says high risk, science says low, and they say, I might get it, but the control group is much higher. And so what this is showing is just by having, even for people that don't listen to him, just by having a disagreement between the scientists and the politicians, it does affect the whole population, right? Even the people that don't really listen to Trump, they're like, well, I mean, something's going on, right? Like, why is there a disagreement here?
Right.
So it does affect everybody, just not as much, right? And so you can see that in the independents, it's a little bit different. Again, I guess they really don't like listening to Trump here or science here. There's more Trump listeners here. But on the GOP side, you can see some of the opposite. Trump says it's low. They're like, shit, yep, go and get that vaccine.
That's interesting, seeing the independents so high after being shown that article. You got to say, though, because, I mean, the test subjects, they weren't raised in a vacuum. So I would think it would be very hard to control these subjects because those independents have already read articles about this in real life, probably. And I know there's ways to controls for that, but I mean, where are you finding these people?
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, that's also it's partially.
That's probably why they have a control group.
Yeah, well, that's what this, and you also can see, like, if this bar was like,
gotcha. Okay, so they have a subsection of the population that wasn't exposed to these articles. Okay, gotcha.
Like, so anyway, I thought this was interesting, and it kind of goes back to that point of like our politicians' views, especially I think Trump was a much stronger person for his base than many have been in the past.
Oh, for sure.
On trusting the word of him over science or other things. Yeah. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting one. That went longer than I thought. And then one that we're going to get to someday. Minimum wage. So this is just some data I thought was interesting. So this article was Common Dreams, which is a very left, I believe, site. I've actually never been on it before. I just happened to see this headline and wanted to read it. I guess some Republican was making the comment, like, because they were talking about $15 minimum wage. He's like, maybe we should just go to 20 then. Something like that, right? And so this article says, well, actually, you're not too far off. We probably should go to 24. Okay. And I didn't read the whole article. It kind of got a little out of hand for me. So all I did is go and find the data that they were talking about again. And their argument in that was, if minimum wage tracked with productivity, then minimum wage should be $24 an hour today. Right. And so I wanted to look up and see what they meant by that.
We talked about it last week, where it's like $24 in California is not the same as 24 in Arkansas.
Right. So that's another topic. This is more like looking at an average, because it's looking at the average productivity. And one of the counter arguments to this is that, yes, productivity as a whole, as an average across the entire working force, has gone up to be average to where minimum wage should equal $24 an hour. But that doesn't mean that the minimum wage worker productivity has increased that much. It could just be that the top 50% of workers or 25% of workers productivity has increased at such an exponential rate that it looks like minimum wage worker productivity would have gone up that much, but they haven't. Right. That's the counter. It's one of the counter arguments to this. But I did think this was an interesting point in showing that if if minimum wage, if you took the minimum wage from I think it was 1960 something, 1964.
It says it right there.
Yeah, but I can't remember if that's when it was. Anyway, so let's just say it was in 1968. So if minimum wage in 1968 equaled what minimum wage was in 1968 compared to the productivity on average in 1968. So the average GDP, I guess, is what they were looking at.
Yep.
If you track average GDP, then minimum wage should have gone up to 24. And this is actual minimum wage compared to
inflation and whatnot.
Compared to productivity current productivity in
right. But what I'm saying is for people who aren't necessarily keen on data, so that the minimum wage is not going down. It's just they're controlling for inflation here. So
no, this is productivity.
No. I'm talking. Look at the actual minimum wage line. It's spiking up and down. That one, right?
Oh yeah.
That one's being controlled for inflation, right? So if you
so it says in 2020.
I mean, minimum wage was not $5 back in 1960s. It was probably like 30 cents.
It says it says in $2020.
Yes.
Right. But it's also not it's comparing it to productivity and other things.
I'm just explaining.
So you're right though. Yeah, it's minimum wages. No, minimum wage is $7.
$7.50, I believe.
$7.50. Yeah. So I mean,
I don't know why it's saying 7 right there. It's probably just.
But
it's
I mean, minimum wage wasn't $8 in 1950.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So they went back. They went backwards with it. So, but the equivalent based on $20 in 1950 minimum wage.
Yeah, look. So let me just comment on that real quick. So this has bothered me for a while, and I've come up with a couple things that I'm not sure are arguments, but I think the problem is that I need somebody who understands economics better than I do to break this down. But the argument that I came up to talk about this is that it's not that the worker has become more productive, it's that our tools have become infinitely more productive, right? For example, anybody working in an office in the 1950s didn't have access to Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Teams, the internet, all that kind of stuff. And so to say that a worker's productivity has gone up does not mean that the worker is working harder, right? So the effort that's being put in is about the same. Or less.
Well, okay. So there's two things with that. I think that make that a really.
Curious argument.
I think you should rethink your thoughts on that. One is that applies across history, right? Like if you had a farmer who just got a new tool, like a horse-drawn plow, rather than having to do it by hand, his tools are allowing him to be more efficient. You know, the amount of muscle power he's putting in may be close to the same or even less, but that doesn't mean that he's not more productive and thus should be making more money from his fields.
It does, though. So every agricultural revolution that has freed up manpower, right? So he's actually using less power, means that you can now support a population center where people are not farming, which is how cities rose in the first place, right?
Okay, so that's a separate issue. The thing I'm saying
is the issue. That is the issue.
No, it's not. We're talking about income for the worker. We're not talking about what it allows economics wise to happen. So if a farmer becomes more productive, regardless if he's like, hey, I'm just going to work twice as hard and expend more muscle energy versus I found a way to be more efficient, he's going to be able to produce more product and
with less effort.
become more profitable from his time, right? So if he's more efficient, he doesn't have to put in 8 hours. He can only put in 4. However, if he continues to put in 8, he should make double the amount of money.
Right, and that means his neighbor no longer has to farm.
Right, and his neighbor can go out and do something else and be productive.
His neighbor
doing
goes
that.
and invents writing, invents government, invents taxes, invents his currency, advances civilization, the wheel, all that stuff.
So great. We agree, though, that in this farmer's case, by becoming more efficient, regardless of how he did it, by using Excel or whatever, he's now more productive, and his higher productivity results in higher income. So I
think, listen, here's my contention, Tim. My contention is that your wage is not tied to the product that you create. I think your wage is more tied to the effort that you put in, right? And the effort that the people around you are willing to put in, right? Because wages are controlled by the supply demand of the economy, right? So if you have a billion people trying to do your job and they'll do it for $1 less, your wage goes down, right?
In a perfect world, the wages are also controlled by power and greed, if allowed, or if and I don't mean allowed by,
if you can bully the employee,
but you can't. I mean by allowed by the public, right? Like if the public is allowed, it doesn't have a law in place or a rule in place, or doesn't
not working for the government who doesn't control their salary.
Either
by quitting.
No, But the point of that article, and I'm not saying that I necessarily agree or don't agree with it, but the point of that article was, again, you actually segued into it very well, which is if the overall productivity of the country is increasing at that rate, why then is the income for the workers not also increasing at the same rate?
Yeah, because
right? Productivity is increasing. The amount of stuff we're putting out is increasing. So the amount of stuff that each individual should be able to get, although I don't think should be equal across the board, on average, right, should also increase with productivity.
But it does. Well, so
Well,
look at
okay,
it.
on average isn't the right word. For any given class, on average, should increase proportionally.
Okay, so but it has, right? Because we are every single one of us in America, except for the poorest of the poor, is wealthier in almost every conceivable way than any of the kings of medieval Europe.
Yeah,
we all have.
But that doesn't mean it increased.
But I think
again, I
think
just showed
that's
you
where your answer is. I genuinely do. Like it's hard to see the connection between those two things, but I think
it's
that
not
is
hard at all. I see the connection. It's an easy connection to see. I think what is hard to see is that, and what you're overlooking on this, and kind of what we talked about before, is that just because we're better off than before doesn't mean we're equally better off, and doesn't mean that we are being equally rewarded, like to the level that people were rewarded before for the same proportional work that's being done into the economy.
Do you know anybody in the country right now who is worse off than their grandparents were?
That's not the point.
That is exactly the point.
It isn't
because
the
our
point at all.
grandparents were working as hard or harder than us, yet we're richer than them.
Hey, we don't live in caves anymore and beat our wives on the head with the clubs.
Correct.
Therefore, we're all equally fairly compensated. That really makes sense to you?
What?
Everybody is
there.
You're saying,
yep,
and an extreme, right? I'm trying to make an extreme point that because we don't live in caves anymore, because we have air conditioning, because we're better off than our predecessors, we are all fairly compensated for our work.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
exactly
that the
what you're
general
saying.
expectation that minimum wage or the average wage should rise with the output, not the effort, is fallacious. Right?
Okay,
because
so you just agreed that if a farmer can double his output by becoming more efficient, his income should increase.
Society becomes generally richer when you do that. That is my contention. And listen, Tim, who has ever been wealthier than we are right now? Like, are you telling me that our wealth is going down, that we're putting more and more work in every year, and yet we're getting less and less out of it? Look at how
I don't understand how you're missing this concept.
I understand this concept. I'm trying to get you to understand my concept, which you're not. I don't think you keep saying you do, but I don't think you do. I think, Tim, because you keep trying to say, and they keep trying to say, that we are not being compensated for the increase in productivity. And then you look around us. Look around us. We are compensated. It just doesn't look like it in a monetary fashion.
I get what you're saying, but I'm not saying that we're not being compensated at all. Right? I'm saying we're not being compensated to the same level for the amount of work that's being, and I shouldn't say we, because I'm not a minimum wage employee, right? Mm-hmm. But minimum wage workers are not being compensated at the same level that minimum wage workers were being compensated back in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Right? Okay, so the problem here is that I'm not a minimum wager. I don't care about the minimum wage.
So, yes, minimum wagers today are better off than minimum wages were in the 50s. That isn't the argument.
Is it not?
No, it's not.
Why not? Why?
Because, and that is the argument you keep trying to make and saying, well, because a minimum wager today has air conditioning and they didn't have air conditioning in the 50s, therefore they're being compensated fairly. And again, it's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. That's like saying...
Who gave them that air conditioning, Tim?
What are you talking about? Who bought it?
Gave them that air conditioning? Did it just ambiently appear out of the air? Or is it something that's rolled into the cost of living in the United States that we all now pay for and can afford because we're so fucking rich?
This is like bashing my head into a brick wall.
Yes, correct. It's the same for me, I promise.
No, I understand 100% what you're saying. And the thing is, your logic train is false. It is true.
It's because you can't connect it. It's because you can't connect the dots.
The truth of the matter... No, you're connecting dots that don't deserve to be connected, and then acting like that's an argument.
Explain to me how we're so wealthy today, right? How we're complaining about how our wages aren't going up to match the productivity, and yet we are wealthier than all of our parents and grandparents.
Let's stop looking at a comparison between generations, because I think that's what hold on, just let me talk for a second.
Wait,
because I think that that is what's confusing your view on this point, right? You continue to compare only the living standards of today versus then, regardless of what it costs to get to those standards or what is normal for everybody else, right? It's like saying, well, because they were starving then and they're not starving now, great, they're better off. Well, yeah, okay, they are better off, but let's compare the minimum wage workers in the 50s to an average wage worker in the 50s to a minimum wage worker today and an average wage worker today, right? So it's not about the disparity between the minimum wage then and the minimum wage now. It's about the disparity between the minimum wage then and an average wage then to a minimum wage now and an average wage now.
Okay.
Right.
So if that's the case, then I don't care, because I don't care about minimum wage. I think the free market should set what people are willing to or not willing to work for. So makes sense.
Yeah.
Like so I don't care about income disparity. We've talked about this before. So income inequality, like that kind of stuff, I don't care about that so much, right? I only care about that in the sense that it elicits an emotional reaction from people. But the fact that somebody, let's say my neighbor has a yacht, that doesn't change the fact that I have what I have, and I'm happy with what I have, right? And that's a mindset right there. I'm not jealous of billionaires. I'm not jealous of people who are higher than me, and I wasn't back when I had crappy jobs that were literally below minimum wage because I just got paid a lump sum at the end of the summer. Like, this is a mindset thing. Like, I just don't care about income inequality so much, right? And that's very conservative of me. I get it, but like, I walked the walk, and now I'm gonna hopefully make a bunch of money someday, and I hope somebody doesn't, drag me down because they want to make more themselves. So,
yeah, I mean, I understand the free market argument. And I've in the past, again, libertarian, been very much free market advocate. I think more recently I've started to become less. And
it's probably just because you're talking to me.
It's partly because of this podcast, but partly just because I've been paying a little more attention to the details, and free market is not as free as it sounds like it is. Like,
go ahead, say utopia.
Without rules and regulations and things in place,
I agree.
Human nature comes into play, and it becomes power over the masses again. The extreme wealth, the extreme power of a company of being able to decide who's employed, and if you make money or you get work or whatever, you have that control. It's not quite the same as being in a monarchy or back in those types of situations, but it's got some similarities to that. Where
we could go all day about that, I suppose.
But anyway, I wasn't trying to get deep into this argument. I just thought that
we don't try to get deep in anything we do. But.
I just thought that it was an interesting data set and an interesting primer for whenever we do get into the minimum wage discussion more. The other meme I had, I'll just close out. We can get onto the trial a little bit.
Yeah, so let's just talk about the trial. I don't actually have much to pull up on that. So, I mean, these videos, I'm watching it on YouTube. I'm watching the trials, and unfortunately, I have to work for a living, so I couldn't get through all of it. But I was speed watching today's to try to prepare for the podcast. I was also watching some of yesterday's Senate proceedings as well to try to get a grasp on this. So let me just summarize it for people so far. So Donald Trump is getting impeached, right? So the House impeached him. They sent it over to the Senate, and now the Senate is impeaching him. And the first day was spent talking about the question as to whether it was legal for the impeachment to continue after Donald Trump had left office. And I'm curious, because I'll talk about some of the arguments they put up, but I'm curious, Tim, what do you know about this? What do you think about it?
Not a whole lot on that. Not a whole lot on that aspect. I tried looking into it a little bit today just because I was curious, and couldn't find a ton. But I did run across a couple things saying that it's not unprecedented at all for impeachments to happen and to occur on people that are out of office. But generally, it hasn't been presidents, and that's why most people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And, we talked about this a little bit in a previous one where you guys kind of changed my mind. My original thought was, look, he's going to be out of office. Just let it go. Like, let the legal system take care of it. Why deal with it through the political system? Mm-hmm. And Chris had brought up some good points in saying there are some benefits that you get as being a former president, including a lifetime wage and other things that could be, lost, taken away, taxpayer money saved, etc. Based on this. And so in that aspect, I think,
so you're thinking because now it'll actually be a punishment if he loses those things. It's
well, it's not as much about it being a punishment to him as a benefit to society or to taxpayers, right? Like,
I suppose.
Like, yeah, I mean, I think the punishment to him could happen in a normal court setting. It wouldn't require impeachment, right? If they wanted to try and prosecute him from a normal standpoint and not from an impeachment standpoint, that would also result in a punishment to him if that was the end goal. But I think that from the standpoint of what it could mean from the political standpoint of him no longer being considered in a way a former president kind of thing or whatever, I think that could be important.
Not the benefits and can't run again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another part too. But I think it's being done more for political reasons.
This is a nonpartisan thing. I'm sure this is one of those things where Chris and I would be like, because he kind of knows how things work there. This whole thing it's partisan. Like, regardless of what you think about it, like whether you think he should or shouldn't be impeached, the way that things work in DC is that the vote is already counted. There's a lot of good speeches, and I'll talk about that in a second. There's a lot of really good speeches, but it doesn't matter. Not a single senator is going to actually sit there, listen to a speech, and be like, "Oh my God, he has a good point. What am I doing supporting Trump?" And then they switch their vote. That's not how it works. Like, politics is people are correct to be cynical about that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of things Americans are cynical about. Not all of it is warranted, but that is absolutely be cynical about that because the vote won't change. They've already been tallied. There's factions in DC. Like you can't betray, the Mitch McConnellers, you just can't go against your party. So, or you can, but it's usually pre-planned. So sometimes you'll get people going against the party, but it's like because they need to survive, they need to win elections, and they're in a purple state. It's complicated, but so it's very, very political, as you said, Tim. There's nothing that's really being generated here except for campaign ads, right? Both sides are going to use this as campaign ads, and public spectacle, I guess. So yesterday, again, like I said, they were talking about whether it was legal or not to even have the trial in the Senate. That was the first thing they voted on, and they voted yes eventually. But I just want to say, if you guys haven't watched this, I don't blame you. It was hours and hours long, so a lot of some of the speeches were good, but a lot of it was kind of dry. Here's the big takeaway. Donald Trump's lawyer is a fucking idiot. Oh my God. I cannot believe. I can't believe. It's just.
You have to. It's real.
Yeah, it is. This is real life, people. So the Democrats put up a very good, very concise argument. They were wrong about a lot of it because it's partisan and it's expected to be, partisan. And so they did a whole bunch of, they went out over their skis a whole bunch, but they made very good points. And in the end, their case was actually, so let me just rewind a second. So they were wrong mostly today. Yesterday, they were right. It is actually, as Tim was saying, there's a very good historical precedent for impeaching people after they're out of office. If you're not sure about this, look it up. I mean, the Democrats made a very good case, and then Trump's lawyer came out and rambled for about 10 minutes. He really said nothing. And I mean that. Go watch what he said. People don't appreciate, well-constructed speeches because we see them from politicians all the time, but go watch this guy. It is painful. He's talking about where he's taking elements from other political speeches he heard, and he's just using them randomly to no effect. Like he just randomly starts talking about how he grew up in this suburb somewhere, and then he's talking about how he knows Devin Nunes, and then he's talking about it, and it's just and he doesn't make a point. And then when he gets to a point, he's not even talking about the matter at hand, which at the time was, hey, is this legal for the Senate to be having this trial? He didn't even talk about that. He just started talking about Trump's how Trump was going to rebut the general arguments in the impeachment. It was crazy. It was so bad, and I felt so vindicated because I actually watched it for myself, and then I went and I read a whole bunch of articles that agreed with me. So I was like, yeah, I could do this for a living. So
Yeah,
yesterday
I didn't watch anything yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday was bad. So, but eventually they voted. Everybody, a whole bunch of people voted yes, including some Republicans. Yes, the Senate can hear this. Yes, we've done this to impeach people out of office before. It's fine. We can do it. So we got to today, and then stuff. So what did you see, Tim? I know you had something from today.
Really the biggest thing that I had a pretty busy work day, and then some other social things that I had to do. So I didn't get around to watching a whole lot of it live. But I watched a couple videos just that the House managers showed as evidence. I thought, rather than listening to the opinions, I just kind of wanted to see some.
Yeah,
of the,
and I want to talk about those too. I was actually going to mention those, so I'm glad you got them.
So that's really where I focused a little bit of my time, and my general opinion was it was a lot more violent and scary. From a sense of if I was there, right? Like, than what I imagined or envisioned from the pictures and information that I had prior.
That was, if you remember, like the week after I came back. So we talked about it 1 week. I think we had a podcast the day that it happened on January 6th. And then the week after, since, I do this quite a bit, I actually saw a lot of the footage that we're going to show here. And it changed my opinion. I was like, "Oh, hold on. This is not like a 2 or a 3. This is a 6. Like, this is a serious event. This was very violent in some cases. Obviously not all of them. I'd say like 80% of them were dopey, pot smoking idiots who just walked in after everybody. But there was a lot of violence that day.
Yeah, it was a lot more than I thought. And like watching, like in one of the, I don't know if we'll see it in this thing, but somebody had a fucking noose set up. Man, there's like
I know. You didn't see that?
Not prior, no. There's like a hangman things with a noose set up. Like what the hell?
It wasn't. I'm not even going to make that point. It was very shoddily constructed. It was.
It looked like it.
People.
Maybe
we saw a different one, but.
Well, no, it looked like it was pretty shittily constructed, but it looked like it would work.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't even know if that was a real noose, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They aren't hard to tie. I used to tie them for fun.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. I think I learned as a kid, but I've definitely forgotten.
It's kind of like a slip knot, like a.
I guess I got to brush up on that if I'm the Republican Party, right? We're the insurrection party now.
I thought that was part of like the membership.
It didn't become standard issue till this year, so I haven't I haven't gotten mine yet. They're backfilling.
That's a terrible joke. We shouldn't do that. I usually have very, very openness to dark humor and all that, but I don't know why that one hit me even too dark. So I don't know. I can pull up some of the video here. We can just kind of click through. I know. So this particular video is from CNN, but it says it's the manager's exhibit, and my understanding is that it's just
They showed them on the floor.
Yeah, it's just a replay of the video that was shown, one of the videos at least, that was shown on the floor.
They showed a couple.
This one goes a little bit into timelines, so it shows when someone's talking, when things are happening, and it kind of describes it. But it's 15 minutes long. But some of the points that really got me, like, this was one where there's a single police officer like trying to do his job here, and these guys just keep chasing him. You can see like the fear, and you can hear it in his voice. Let me turn this up.
We can't hear it
at all.
It's coming in and coming out. I wonder what's going on with that. Sorry, everybody. We it's been a while since we've shown a video with sound.
You should be able to hear it. It's kind of quiet.
My challenge today is not about the good people of Arizona.
I'm not sure what's going on.
Really? Okay. Well, anyway, so like that's an example. I think I know one thing I can do to try and fix this, but That's one of the examples of what really got me. Is like there's some others too. The one that got me the most was this guy getting squished in the door.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's hard to watch.
So this is when that lady got shot. They show that in here.
Is it?
Yeah. Let me play that.
Yep.
Right there.
Yep.
She starts to climb through. Boom. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's not even the best shot of it. There's a shot on her when she's actually climbing through. So that was when Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yeah, it's and like it's not like it's a small amount of people.
Yeah, I just got to say something to the Republicans. Hey, look, if you're, I know some people are starting to idolize Ashley Babbitt or martyr or consider her a martyr for the cause. You got to understand that Secret Service person shot her as she was trying to climb into a hallway. At the end of that hallway was Mike Pence. Like the vice president of the United States was at the end of that hallway. Ashley Babbitt, I'm not saying, and I try to say this whenever we talk about incidents of people getting killed. She didn't deserve to die, right? I'm sure she was a good person, but she certainly forfeited her life by climbing into that hallway, right? I try not to say people deserve death. I reserve that for a select few amount of people, but she definitely forfeited her life by climbing to that hallway, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you put yourself in these types of situations, you definitely escalate the results that can come from that.
Absolutely.
And, like if you broke into somebody's house and you got shot because you did that,
it doesn't mean you deserve to die. Maybe you're desperate, but you have forfeited your life at that point.
Or even is breaking into someone's house a crime that deserves to be killed? You get to get killed for right now. Obviously, our society doesn't believe so.
Right, exactly.
But when you put yourself into I don't want to say extreme situations, but these types of situations, when you take these extra risks, like sometimes the worst scenario that could happen happens, and that's what happened there, right? Like I'm sure that security officer did not want to shoot her. Like he probably feels bad that ended.
He had. You can see he had the weapon out for a long time. If he wanted to, he would have shot earlier and at more people.
And many more times. Yeah.
Yes.
But there's a lot of through this video, like these, you can hear the voice and stuff, and they have it.
Yeah, they definitely
no Trump, no peace. There's one back here where the guy they're in the office, and he's like, we're listening to Trump. I think it's right here. We're listening to Trump. We're listening to your boss. Right? It says right there, we are listening to Trump, your boss. Which is clear, like we're here because Trump told us to be here. Right?
This was, I believe, this was the video where they were playing. They made a whole bunch of good points. They made a whole bunch of points today. I disagree with all of them to an extent, right? But they made some good points within them. But this video was a part of them trying to tie Trump to the mob explicitly, like because they're trying to make a case that Trump explicitly not just caused this, but explicitly caused this particular thing intentionally, right? Actually wanted people to storm down to the Capitol and riot. So part of it was them. Yeah, look at that.
No, we'll go back a second because I think. Yeah, because I showed a couple of them. I wasn't trying to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Play that thing.
So that's them spraying mace at the cops first.
Yep.
Calling the cops traitors. Ripping off their masks. Like, could you imagine being that cop and not taking force into account? Like,
I don't know if
they're.
I don't know if they have lethal weapons on them.
They might not, because it's just like it's a lot more violent than what we kind of see originally, you know? Even
it takes
pictures
a while
don't
to collate all the footage.
Yeah, even pictures don't do it full justice,
No,
you
they
know?
don't.
And then like there's things like this afterwards, during and afterwards.
Are they destroying camera equipment?
Well, that, but like if you listen to this guy's speech, I have to go back a second. He says he starts off mobilizing your own cities.
Yep.
Now this says 7 people. I thought it was 5, but I don't know.
What the heck? Yeah, it is 5. And they even said that during the trial. I gotta say about that. So let me say, I'm not pivoting. So I just want everybody, let's just dwell on this one more second before I make this point, because I swear to God, I'm not pivoting. This is a point that needs to be made. But this was horrendous. This was bad, right? And so as a Republican, just remember you can divorce yourself from this, right? You didn't want this. We don't want this. This was not a good thing. This was very bad, right? An officer had his eyes gouged out, as they talked about. An officer had his head bashed until he died from an internal bleeding in the brain. Like, people died. This was horrible, right? So just sit on that. Be as a Republican, like, this doesn't weaken you to admit. So just I recommend doing it. And that doesn't change the fact that I don't understand. I still to this day don't actually understand why they're saying 5 people died and attributing it to the mob. Because from what I understand, 3 of those people were medical emergencies, and no more information has come out. Like, none.
I haven't looked into it at all. I don't know.
Yeah, but
maybe I'll do that and once we get off of here.
Yeah, I am genuinely curious about it. But like from I think day 2 after it, they were saying 5 people died, and 3 of them were medical emergencies. Well, it's like, I mean, I saw a guy die from a heart attack I didn't see him, but I know a guy died from a heart attack at the festival, that we had 2 years ago up the street. It's like,
I mean, based on what I saw there, it could easily have been trampling or something too, right? Like, and that could have caused a medical emergency.
That's my point, though, is that no additional information came out. They specifically said multiple times that no additional information had come out about it, yet the number was getting added to the total of deaths. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious about that. Listen, it's freaking horrible. I'm going to be not excited, but definitely very okay with the people who did this going to jail. Like, they need to go to jail. And I hope it's the people that committed the violence going to jail, not necessarily the people that just wandered in afterwards. Sure, trespassing, whatever, charge them. But the people who committed violence, I hope they go to jail for a long time.
So correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but unlike a typical trial where you're charged with something specific, like in this case, some of these people were being charged with sedition or whatever. Trump isn't necessarily charged with something specific, right? This is
yes.
Did he do something? So my thought was it was more like he did X, Y, or Z that we think is an impeachable offense. Here's our evidence, and then they decide on, oh yeah, that was something that deserves impeachment, and he's gone. Not necessarily like, oh, you have to meet the definition of sedition or treason or whatever as you would in a normal court.
The thing that they have to hit is high crimes and misdemeanors, and you basically have to interpret that to the best of your ability. It's that's actually going to be tough to hit without overextending themselves, because what they basically need to do, and you actually saw this, you saw them spooling up for this on this day. I'm sorry, day 2 of the trial. You need to prove that he really committed a crime here, right? A high crime or a misdemeanor. So that doesn't just mean that his rhetoric was bad, right? Because politicians use bad and wrong rhetoric all the time. It means that he knew what was likely to happen, aka the Capitol incident, and did what he did regardless, right? That would be the very lowest standard of a high crime or misdemeanor. What the Democrats are trying to prove is that he intentionally whipped up his base to do this, and then invited them to D.C. on the 6th in order to get them to do that. And that's going to be a tenuous case.
Have you seen any of the? I'm watching myself and I look like I'm passing out, and I'm really not. I was watching my video and I was like sitting here like this.
That's what happens when you have to listen to me. Sorry.
But it's where I have two monitors, the camera's in the middle, your screen's off to the side, and I generally anyway.
I'm like down here, so I'm like looking at myself right now, which I do all the time, and I can't stop. You're up here, so this is when I'm looking at you, and then here's looking at the camera, which I never do.
Right now is me looking directly at where your camera, where you're at on my monitor. Okay. So I was sitting here like this, like just looking at you like that, and it looked like I was passed out. But anyway, have you heard about the meetings that Trump had with a couple of these organizers several days before all of this? Like he had them to the White House and stuff?
No.
Have you heard about that at all?
I figured they would have mentioned that. I didn't get to all of the Democrats' arguments today, but I didn't hear anything.
I don't know if it was brought up in this or not. In me looking for these videos, I came across it, and there's a couple of the organizers of this that, were giving speeches and up in front of all these people and stuff earlier in the day that actually had posted videos and things of them getting a special invitation and meeting with Trump at the White House or something like that.
Yeah,
I didn't
for something or other.
No, it was two guys, two different guys that I saw. I don't know the details. I didn't follow up on that at all. I just happened to see it and come across it and was like, huh. I assumed they'll probably talk if it's legit. I assume they're going to talk about that in the impeachment trial, because to me that's pretty strong evidence that he, could have been part of this early on, or
I'm assuming this to happen. If that's the case, then they probably brought it up later. But
or they haven't yet, right? There's still time left, I would imagine.
It could be. So I got to say, again, I got to point out to everybody, it's a political exercise. So what the Democrats are going to do is try to elicit the maximum emotional impact. I got to say that the speeches on the first day from the Democrats, really, really touching. The guy, the head guy who's in charge of this whole effort from the Democrat side, he gave a really moving speech where his family was in the Capitol. They were there for the first time. He was really proud to have them there. Then all of this happened on January 6th, and then his family was cut off from him, and it was a very, very moving story, and that is the exact point. They're not actually going to get the votes, right? So all the speeches, just remember that when you're hearing all of these speeches, the point is not to get votes, even though it sounds like it is. The point is actually to elicit a maximum emotional response for the Democrats, and then the Republicans are going to want you to cool down and calmly consider the facts, right? Just in this case, right? Just because of how it lays out, because it's more the emotional strength of a violent attack on the Capitol is going to be the strong suit of the Democrats in this case. Right, so I'm not saying Republicans will never appeal to emotion, but a lot of the stuff. So I was listening to this whole thing, and I was looking for new stuff, right? And aside from a little bit of the footage that you saw, Tim, and that we all saw, aside from some of the new stuff, it was actually all the same stuff. It was stuff that we've talked about on this podcast, right? They were talking about, again, this is where I go to my narrative of everybody constructs their narrative brick by brick, and every time you examine a brick that you're putting in your narrative, you decide what it is, and then you throw it in there. And so it was much of the same stuff. They were talking about all the stuff that we don't like that Trump did, and it's all the same stuff. It's just partisan. A lot of it's nonsense. Some of it's half true. Some of it's mostly true, but none of it is actual direct ties, and maybe we'll get to this, but none of this is actual direct evidence that Donald Trump knew what he was doing and did it intentionally. There's a lot of circumstantial stuff. There's a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of saying that he must have known, or the FBI had intelligence, and they said they were going to do it. There was a lot of tying people saying we're doing this because of Trump rather than actually showing that Trump told them to do it, right? People being crazy is not your responsibility so much, right? To an extent, right? Because if Tim comes on the Left, Right, and Center podcast and he says the $15 minimum wage is a human right, and people are literally dying because they're not getting it, and Tim says that, Tim can say that. But if a crazy person goes up and shoots people, shoots some Congress people because $15 minimum wage is a human right and people are dying and they're not putting it in, that's not Tim's fault, right? Tim made a good argument, maybe in bad faith, but that's still his First Amendment right, and he can't be held to account for actual crazy people who are following his stuff. So, and it's more murky than that, and I can see on Tim's face what you're going to say is it's like it was a little bit more predictable than that, because obviously it was. At this point, you should realize that Donald Trump was 100% wrong about election fraud. Again,
everything.
Speaking to my Republican base, like Donald Trump did not even allege election fraud in court in Pennsylvania.
Look, if Mitch McConnell comes out and says, right, like,
Mitch. Yeah,
fucking Turtle Mitch, pure party Mitch comes out and says there was not anywhere near the amount of any evidence showing that there's anything near the amount of election fraud that would be required to do what Donald Trump is claiming. If he comes out and says it, you really have to question, because he doesn't ever say anything that is not.
Cocaine Mitch rarely walks faster than a crawl.
So what I was going to say is, there's kind of 2 points on that. One is, we talked about this a little bit before, but there is the part of the legal system that requires intent and proof of intent. And so when we talked about this, about the Russia collusion and all that other stuff, and I kept saying the reason they didn't indict him, the reason that it came back where that he was not guilty basically and all that, was because they couldn't prove his knowledge and or intent. He had to know that what he was doing was breaking the law and be doing it anyway, and they couldn't prove that, right? So that some of that kind of applies in this, and that you're trying to prove a state of mind, right? And that's very difficult to do.
Very, very difficult. It's a very rigorous standard. Historically speaking, that's a very, very rigorous legal standard.
Yeah, so it's difficult to prove. I think in this instance, because this is more a battle of peers, it's not about proving it via evidence, like to a proof standpoint. It's like, are you convincing enough of these senators that he actually did, right? But I think one question I have for you, Nate, is, granted, I agree with you. I don't think that it's something that's going to be proven or is provable based on what I've seen, but just gut feeling. Do you think that he had any intent to this level, or really was trying to incite this type of a response?
No, I don't. No, he's for me particularly. Listen, I mean, he went dark towards the end there, right? So I genuinely did lose touch with him, but at the same time, he was still the same person. Just he believed some wacky stuff, right? So I could still tell from his speech it was lighthearted. He said, "Go do it peacefully and patriotically." The way that he constructed the speech was bombastic, inflammatory, and yet had nothing to do with going inside the Capitol or storming the Capitol. It was supposed to be, my gut is supposed to be a protest, and his words kind of bear that out. And there was a lot of selective editing today, which was annoying, because this is Congress, not YouTube. I kind of wish they'd shown the context of everything, like several times. Look, I just got to say, again, it's partisan, and we've been over a lot of stuff. Like they went over the call to the Georgia Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And we litigated that, and we all came across different opinions, but at the end of the day, like, again, that's up to interpretation, yet they're using it in a court battle. But I don't remember I was going after that. But
I mean, everything's up to interpretation, though. I think that it's fair to use that in a court battle for sure. It helps to show his state of mind, his level of thought.
Oh, I was talking about selectively editing. So, for example, they did the Secretary of Georgia of State thing, and if you recall, excuse me, it was a call that Donald Trump gave to Georgia Secretary of State, and he said, I need you to find me 11,964 votes, or however many it was, to get him the victory, right? And that was the Democrat talking point. And it was the wrong talking point because in the context of the call, Donald Trump said, there are these many votes that were switched from me to Biden. There were these many dead people that voted. I should have gotten way more votes. I should have gotten hundreds of thousands more votes. I just need you to find me 11,000 votes, right? And they took that last part out of context, which is a very political thing to do because the context obviously changes the meaning of the sentence, and they actually used it in the trial. So like I'm saying, it's political, it's manipulative, it's emotional, and it's going to be the same thing on the Republican side, but just Republican,
Well, if it's Trump Republican, it's going to be a complete.
It's not going to be manipulative at all because it's not going to manipulate anybody. I'm telling you, that lawyer. Oh God, I heard Trump was actually freaking out. Like Trump actually knew that he fucked up.
He did that. His legal crew for as far back as I can. I mean, Giuliani was a mess. Everybody during all of the election fraud stuff, most of them were disasters. It's just like. Some of them like misspelled the United States of America.
Oh my God. They had a typo in their submission to Congress.
Just come on with this shit. It's not even real. But, who knows? I don't know what's going to happen from this. My gut feeling is, they're not going to come through with the articles of impeachment.
They're not. But, it's preordained at this point. Unless something miraculous happens and they come out with some of the stuff we're talking about where... Let's say they did an inquiry and they actually have, say, emails from Trump to somebody saying, I need you to do this for this, right? A direct causal link to he was trying to incite the mob to go to the Capitol, right? Unless they get any of that kind of stuff, it's probably not. It's going to be a 44 to 60, whatever, 66, or a 45 to 65 vote.
Yeah.
It's already been tallied.
I think Trump's
2/3.
I think Trump's pretty ignorant on a lot of things. How to be like shady is not one of them, right? Like he knows to not say this shit in emails, etc. And when he does say this stuff in recorded messages, he's very careful to contextualize it and put those things around it. Like,
right, that would
be an example. Like
if he was trying to do this, he is a very careful person. I'm of the mind that he is a sloppy person and he genuinely didn't want this. But
I don't necessarily think he want. Yeah. I don't think he wanted anyone to die per se. I don't think he. I don't know that he particularly wanted the Capitol raided or not. My gut feeling says he did. My gut feeling says he wanted. He wanted a show of force strong enough to try and stall the thing. Now, I don't think an external protest is going to be strong enough to do that, and I think he would be smart enough to know that.
I think I agree with the first part. I think he wanted a very strong protest. I don't agree with the second part. I'm sorry, the other way around. Your first part and your second part, but I think he wanted a strong demonstration.
I mean, do you think that his goal was to try and delay the vote count? Right. That's why he picked that exact moment to give the speech and to say, let's march down there. Right.
No.
So, and that's what Giuliani had been doing. I'm not saying I'm not trying to say he wanted them to raid it per se. I don't know that, but I think his goal, similar to what Giuliani had been trying to do and what they'd been trying to do for weeks ahead of time, is to continue to delay the count.
Yeah.
To, as they were saying, try and give them time to find this evidence and get stuff together, right? They felt like they needed this time. I think he truly believed he needed this time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the thing, too.
To either legitimately come up with evidence or find compelling enough fake evidence. I don't know if he truly believes that there was a fraud or not.
But I think he does. And I think that's the biggest problem, right? Because for intent, you need to know what you're doing is wrong. But if he literally thinks that the country's being taken from him, it's going to be hard to impeach him on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword for him too, because if he's that stupid that he actually believes that it was fraudulent, then that gives you, as a Trump supporter, in my opinion, this is again going to go on your cognitive dissonance. So you either have to then say, okay, now I have to reevaluate everything that he's been saying and doing, and all of these, benefit of the doubts that I've been giving him over the last 4 years, and reevaluate him and say, okay, yeah, maybe he was just that big of a fucking idiot, right? Because if he's so ignorant that he can't see that there wasn't a fraud,
Tim,
or
are you asking me to re-examine all the bricks that I already put in my pyramid?
You're almost as smart as me. So so it's either that, or the other option is that he knows that this is fake, and he's still doing this, and then you have to do the same damn thing. You have to go back and reevaluate and say, okay, well, now it's obvious that he's shady. So it's almost that what's the argument against Jesus? There's one that I've heard before. It's like he can't be omnipotent and
good.
Yeah, he can't be all powerful and all good, right? Because either he's all powerful and all he should be able to fix all these things.
The evil, or
or he's all good, but then doesn't have the power to fix it. He can't be both, right?
I'm sure a priest could come. I'd be curious to have like an actual priest.
I had somebody
say that. Wouldn't that be?
I had somebody give me a really good counter argument to that one time, and
they have stuff you'll never believe. Like a lot of those good arguments that you hear, sometimes they have really convincing counter arguments, and you're like, "What the fuck?" You're like wondering why the church hasn't crumbled in 2,000 years, and it's like, well, there's a couple smart people.
I found it. This is it right here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they had a really good counter argument. And I forget what it was, but it was basically like, it's not his job. I think it was something they said in a much better way, but it's job
description.
It's freedom of will. That's what it was. It was he gave us freedom of will, so it's on us or something like that.
Doesn't explain Lucifer. Anyways, okay, all right. Sorry, I love you, my Christian audience. I grew up Christian, so I'm very partial, more partial than Tim to religion. Actually, that'd be a fun podcast someday.
I actually envy people that are religious.
Same.
Yeah. I'm not. I can't be. Like my brain doesn't let it happen. But I envy that sense of security, that sense of like
purpose, narrative.
I was just gonna say like confidence, that sense of like just like
it helps you. I think it helps. All right, not to get into this, but I think it helps. It helps lock down a whole bunch of questions that you no longer need to answer or consider. And it saves your mental energy for other things in your life. I think.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I envy about people that have those faiths and beliefs, regardless of religion, as long as it's generally a positive one towards individuals and societies. But
indeed.
Well, we're running late, and it's just two of us, so we can. Unless you got any final closing thoughts, we can try and wrap it up.
I'm good. Had a good podcast. We'll see. We'll see how this goes going forward. Like again, Chris couldn't make it tonight. He was helping a friend move to Poland or something. I don't know. Well, so we'll see how that goes. So
yeah. So well, I enjoyed it. It was good back and forth. Covered some interesting topics. As always, push the like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Push the dislike if you didn't. Leave some comments below. And any feedback, let us know. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys. Peace.